Hello everyone. So I did a psychic reading on David Icke. He is a conspiracy theorist who has popularized the idea of reptilian shapeshifters basically ruling the planet, and a lot of the popular politicians of today, he says, are actually reptilian beings. I'm not sure if he says that they're from another planet or not, but I have also heard other theories that they're not actually from another planet, but they're actually from Earth. Either way, this isn't about that. This is more of a reading of him in general. And so I'll just explain what I saw as I did the reading. I don't want to do the full reading because it just takes up too long. Um, so basically the gist of what I was seeing was he was he's not very happy in his life. Um, there's a lot of frustration with other people, a lot of loneliness. Um, he's been kind of like the outcast. He's like a lot of people laughing at him, kind of picking on him on some level, and him really feeling this need to defend himself and to be right and to like have some sort of um, thing that is like more powerful than everything else that's gone in, so that it kind of like makes everything else irrelevant, if that makes any sense. So like all the pain, all the things that he may not have done in his life, or whatever it is that people seem to be kind of making him feel bad about, even if it's not even a real thing, like even if it's like their own judgments on him that aren't real. Regardless, it's like he wants to have something like where he can be like, see, I told you, and it's like so big of a deal that it just kind of like wipes away everything else, and it's just like his like righteousness shines through, and that's what he's going for. um and it does look like he has a very intuitive sense, like he is tapping into some truths within the world, specifically the unjust situation of the world. He's sensitive to energy, and he can tell that there's just things that are not right. In the way that, like you could say, an empath or someone. Like I have this a lot where I can just kind of go outside and just like normal conversations where most people are just like, oh yeah, it's totally a great conversation. You know, it's just people hanging out or whatever. I can still kind of like sometimes sense this, just like something's just not right, and it's just like the judgments and just the negativity people have in their minds. And even though it's just normal, normal, it's still there. And so he's like very keenly aware of things like that, and he really wants to you know make that known and like bring justice to that. And so there's a lot of, I was also seeing a lot of motherly energy. um and he's kind of in relation to that. It's like he's like child, and there's a mother who's like taking care of him. And when I was seeing that, it occurred to me that I know he talks about taking ayahuasca, and I wasn't sure. I was like getting like the sense like this is like a mother from like a past life or something like that. I didn't really know what it was. So I'm not saying that that's what it is, that it's like the Mother Ayahuasca, but I do know that was a big, big influence on his work. So it's possible that that's what I was seeing. But then later at a different time, I did see his mother. That was definitely his actual mother showing up. Trying to remember what that was about. Yeah, I think it was just about him, like being a kind of like in a child role on an energetic level to some degree, and pointing his fingers at a lot of people, um, to try and feel validated within himself, because he has been made fun of a lot, and that seems to be something that's like really bothering him. And he really, like, I already said this, but it's like I want to say it again because it's so emphasized, is the sense of isolation, um, and this sense of frustration with people and the world. It was really showing up a lot. And it seemed like there was all just like this like kind of like selfish, childish kind of theme going on until I got to actually the sixth layer, which has to do with clairvoyance, your ability to see other people or be seen. And like his sixth layer of his energy field, or whatever you want to call it, I saw as like there's this ball, and he's like kind of standing in like the outer space, and it's symbolic, of course. And this ball, and it's all kind of like the universe, and so, and he's like putting his hand into this ball, and it's like the inverted version of his hand is in the ball, and he can like see it, and it's like this other dimensional. I don't know how to describe it exactly, but it was like he was playing with the nature of reality. It was the gist of what was going on. Um, and so he's keen on some very interesting metaphysical aspects of reality, and it looks like he's very fascinated and curious about this, and that is intriguing. And I do want to say I think he is very intuitive, and he is on to some stuff. Um, but what I was seeing was that these truths that he has found, whether you want to call them full truths or half truths or whatever, I'm not here to say that they are one or the other. I don't know. Um, but regardless, he's kind of using those to put himself up on a pedestal, and to kind of almost have revenge on people in some way, if that makes any sense. To um, to make himself better than everyone, to make everyone else's ideas about him like irrelevant. Um, at one point, I was seeing like a woman. He'd been in a relationship. That type of energy dynamic was showing up, and there was a lot of blame and involved, and pointing the finger on his part, and he was kind of using his enlightenment to do things that were not necessarily very enlightened, if that makes sense. So the other interesting thing that was showing up, which is probably the most like important, I guess, what I'm really getting to, I guess, is there's this guy that was showing up, and he kind of looked like almost like a mobster kind of guy, smoking a cigar. And this is not so literal as much as symbolic of people. I don't necessarily see people exactly, like literally how they are. I usually see somebody who kind of represents someone, like the energy of that person, not like necessarily exactly actually how they may look. Like I might see Godzilla, you know, and it might represent someone of that stature, you know, if that makes any sense. But anyways, very mob-like energy. But then when I looked more, it wasn't about being in the mob. It was almost like being in a science fair. And the first thing that popped up into my mind was UFOs. Um, and I was like, okay, so this has something to do with UFOs, definitely. And it was like very sciencey, very like strange. Like I almost want to say pseudoscience, but it's not really pseudoscience. It's more just like weird, kind of off the beaten path science. Maybe pseudoscience. Maybe it is pseudoscience, actually. I'm not sure. But this guy was very rich, and David Icke is somehow connected with this, and David Icke has his truths. Like he knows some stuff, like intuitively, or however he came to like knowing that there are some things that are off in our world. And it's like he's come to these understandings, but he's really using them in this way to set him apart from other people. And there's this influence that I don't know if it, I wasn't seeing like they were like controlling him necessarily. It was more like he wanted to be in with them, like they had knowledge, like they had all this like this cool stuff, you know, like when you go to a science fair or whatever, there's all this cool stuff, and it's almost like he was kind of like falling for that in some sense. And it's not that they were really trying to pay him off or anything like that. I mean, maybe, I don't know. That's not exactly what I was seeing. I wasn't saying that it wasn't that either, I should specify. But it was that they had some sort of agenda that they wanted him, that they wanted to influence him into believing, and it's not like he, it's confusing it because it's like part of him kind of knows that it's not necessarily like the truth, but it's like true enough, and it helps him get his points across. So it kind of like reinforces what he's already saying, so he uses it in that way because it creates more weight to be able to have him point his finger at what he sees as wrong. Although it's a little bit off, and I'm not sure if he quite knows that entirely himself, but regardless, he's like stuck in that energy of like, I'm pure and everyone else is like lower and, you know, worse, bad, basically. And so when I really dived into this guy, which I think is more symbolic of a group of people, is it's like really like a club. I'm not talking about like Freemasons or something like that. I specifically got the insight that it was not Freemasonry. It's not like that, but it's just like this group, like this club of people. Um, from what I was seeing, I would feel safe to assume that it's white men only, and rich. And what they want is, or what they have to offer him is information that's kind of about like aliens and stuff like that, or stuff that's like kind of far out there, and they know stuff and they're really enticing to him. But what they're pushing is that aliens are bad. And that's kind of the whole thing that David Icke preaches is, you know, there's these reptilian overlords that are taking over the planet, and it's an alien takeover, whether they're technically aliens or whether he's saying that they're from the Earth originally. Either way, they're not human. And so these people have some vested interest in him preventing people from getting more interested in aliens. As crazy as that sounds. Of course, the whole thing sounds pretty crazy to begin with as soon as you mentioned David Icke. I used to actually read his books, and you know, I enjoyed listening to him talk about things. But yeah, I don't really buy what he says, especially after doing this reading now. I think there's like a government goal to keep people from being aware of these types of things. And I haven't really exactly read this, but my initial belief, maybe I should read this clairvoyantly, but regardless, my initial belief is that the government just doesn't want people to take advantage of a lot of spiritual and just things along that nature, because it would dismantle the whole system that everybody is kind of indoctrined into. And it's like kind of the same reason why a lot of psychedelics have been made illegal. It's not necessarily for people's safety, it's because it makes people think erratically. It makes people shift. It could start a revolution, and I think that's really their fear, is that people could start doing things so differently, it would start a revolution and people would stop listening to the government and there would be a government overthrow. And I think that's ultimately what it's about. Of course, this is all just speculation at this point. So, I'm going to stop talking about my personal opinions and ideas about things and leave you with my psychic insights on David Icke. Thanks for watching. If you're a David Icke fan, I don't mean to offend you or anything. I think he actually has some really good things to say. Actually, even though I would take everything with a grain of salt. Take this reading with a grain of salt. I could be wrong. Who knows? Anyways, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel. Click the notification bell. And make sure to click all so that way whenever I make a new video you'll be notified. Thank you. Have a great day.